Aaron Gornstein is the Undersecretary for Housing and Community Development for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Aaron oversees the Department of Housing, Community Development, and he serves as the Chief Housing Policy Advisor to the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Greg Bilecki, and to the Governor Deval Patrick. He also serves as the Chairman of the Community Economic Development Assistance Corp., which provides technical and financial assistance to nonprofit developers of affordable housing. Prior to his appointment, where I think most of us really know Aaron from, is his service as the Executive Director of CHAPA, the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, from 1990 to January of 2010. Aaron is one of the most credible and admired and distinguished members of the housing community, particularly in terms of housing, affordable housing in the greater Boston region. He received his undergraduate degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and his graduate degree from Tufts University Department of Urban and Environmental Policy. So it's my pleasure to introduce our good friend, Aaron Gornstein.
Thank you, Mary Jo. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks for your leadership and Paul's leadership on community development issues here at the Foundation. It's been a privilege to work with you for so many years. And to Barry, it's true, he's the best presenter I've seen, and a great writer, and it's so cogent, and he's able to capture all the major trends in a very short presentation. So it's tough to follow Barry, but I also want to acknowledge Representative Sanchez for his leadership on the Hill on affordable housing in the legislature, so thank you. And I just wanted to update you. Yep, he deserves... I wanted to update you on some of our new initiatives at DHCD, and Barry's mentioned a few of them, but before I do that, I wanted to convey the dire consequences of the federal government shutdown if it continues much longer. Thousands of state employees will be facing furloughs or layoffs, and dozens of programs for low-income families, seniors, and veterans will soon run out of funding. At our agency alone, as of November 1st, we will not be able to provide heating assistance to 200,000 households, and we will not be able to make rent payments for 20,000 low-income households receiving Section 8 assistance, and 35 home projects with 1,500 units of affordable housing will be delayed. So we need the CR to pass as quickly as possible. There have been impacts already being felt, but November 1st is really, I think, the turning point for people who are actually going to be denied benefits as the winter season is upon us. And it was cold last night in my house, and if you're a senior citizen relying on fuel assistance, it's going to be tough come November 1st if you're not able to get heat. Those are just some of the consequences, and there are many others. But let me set that aside and talk about more positive things, which is the multifamily housing production initiatives, as well as what we're doing on public housing reforms. And I'll finish up on a few other things. So we're pursuing a number of initiatives regarding the governor's goal of producing 10,000 multifamily units annually. And I'm pleased to report that through August of this year, the state has produced 5,500 multifamily units statewide, which is 65% higher than at that time last year. So far, we are on pace to have the best year on multifamily housing since 2006. And so what are we doing to try and accelerate that? Not all of it is due to our actions. Of course, there's the private market that's responding to pent-up demand, and but what we are trying to really push projects forward. So we're working directly with municipalities to expedite permitting and to prioritize our state financing and funding to move projects into construction, including both market rate and affordable housing. For example, we're now reviewing the MassWorks applications. These are infrastructure grants. And we're placing a very high priority for the first time on providing infrastructure funding to projects that include new multifamily development and mixed-use development. So I think you will see when the awards are announced soon that many housing projects will also get infrastructure support. Some of those will be funded by DHCD as well. So we're really trying to coordinate our funding sources. We're encouraging the creation of housing development incentive payment zones, as Barry had mentioned, and these are state tax credits for market rate housing in the gateway cities. We've approved plans for 7 cities, and we expect more zones to be approved in the future. We're now really looking at all the 40R districts and projects carefully, and other areas that are appropriately zoned for multifamily housing, and then really trying to market those districts to developers. At the same time, we're encouraging the creation of new 40R districts in compact neighborhoods and the new expedited 43D for housing, and offering planning grants to stimulate the activity. So we do have funding in the Smart Growth Trust Fund, as you know, so we really are encouraging the adoption of new districts. In June, during our first ever Massachusetts Housing Week, the governor announced new awards for approximately 700 units of permanent affordable housing. And then we're going to be announcing an additional 1,000 units of affordable housing in November next month as part of our current rental round, assuming that the housing bond bill passes. But Rep. Sanchez is going to help us get that done, hopefully next week. And we're making great progress on our supportive housing initiative. The governor created a goal of 1,000 units of supportive housing over the next 3 years. So far this year, we've awarded funds or created about 400 units of supportive housing for extremely low-income households. These include families, veterans, people with disabilities, and others who need both housing and support services, and coordinating those funding streams is a big part of what we're trying to do. We do have a new Housing Preservation and Stabilization Trust Fund, and once the money is deposited into that account, hopefully later this month, we'll be able to do 150 additional units of supportive housing with the $10 million that the legislature will provide. And finally, later this fall, we'll be announcing our first homeownership development round in many years to help moderate-income families to purchase their own homes. So you should look forward to that pre-application process later this fall. In terms of public housing, we're moving forward on a number of key reforms while also making significant new investments in revitalizing state public housing. Some of the more recent reforms include the development of a statewide waiting list and application process, mandatory commissioner trainings, mandatory financial audits for all housing authorities, and the developments for the first time of performance benchmarks and evaluations. So I think we're really trying to hold housing authorities accountable, but at the same time we know that they need more funding. And we've increased their public housing operating subsidy just this fiscal year by 9%, on top of what we did last year of 6%. And we were able to do this because of the investments we're making in energy efficiency, so we're getting utility savings in our public housing stock. And then we federalized close to 4,000 public housing units from state public housing to federal public housing. Now the federal government is going down to the low levels of the state public housing funding, but nevertheless, those federalized units have helped savings. This fall, in addition to our formula modernization grants, we're implementing several key public housing initiatives. I just wanted to go through a few of them. We're really focusing on getting vacant units that have been offline back online as quickly as possible, and we've reoccupied about 400 units over the past 2 years, and we'll be dedicating another $4 million to this effort this year. Later this month, we're going to be announcing our first awards to the housing authorities for comprehensive revitalization grants using mixed financing. In other words, leveraging our public investments with private financing, whether it's the 4% tax credit or others. And so I'm really excited about that. We'll be announcing those awards later this month to kick off that program. These are pre-development awards, and then they'll be followed up with more significant investments next year. This fall, we'll be issuing a NOFA for a new resident self-sufficiency program in state public housing and rental assistance, which will be a 5-year commitment to try and really work with families on job training, employment, child care, other supports that they need to be able to increase their incomes and create more sustainable tenancies. So we'll be investing in a resident self-sufficiency program this fall. All those grew out of our Public Housing Study Commission, and we're really acting on virtually every recommendation since the commission released its report last year in June. So in addition to multifamily production and the public housing initiatives I mentioned, I wanted to just finish up by letting you know of a few other things that are coming up. We are issuing 1,000 new state rental vouchers to help low-income families to afford rents in private apartments. And Barry mentioned the escalating rents, the lower vacancy rents, the rates, the tighter rental market. And so we have the MRVPs, which was provided by the legislature in the budget, and we're getting those out the door to 1,000 families now. Last fiscal year, we also issued 1,000 mobile vouchers. So this is the most number of new state vouchers issued in a 12-month period since the 1980s. So we are really spending every dime we have in helping low-income families afford their rent in private apartments through MRVP. But in addition to the mobile vouchers, I feel very strongly that we also have to provide project-based subsidies to spur development. So if we're going to ask developers to serve extremely low-income households, below 30% of area median income, you actually have to provide ongoing operating subsidy to do it, as well as the capital subsidy. So we issued 150 project-based vouchers in fiscal year 13, and we're going to be issuing 350 project-based vouchers as well this fiscal year with the legislative funding that we were provided with. 100 of those are in the current rental round. And so I'm hoping that we'll get those into placement as soon as possible, as soon as we announce the funding round and people can go forward with their projects. Finally, there's a new tax credit for community development corporations you may know about. I'm very excited about that program. And that's to leverage private support to support the operations and the capacity of our community development corporations. We've certified 41 across the state. They will be eligible for this new tax credit. And they're going to go out and raise funding and they're actually starting to do that. But we will have a NOFA on the street in November for this new community investment tax credit program for CDCs. And that is going to help in terms of undertaking revitalization projects, whether it's economic development or affordable housing going forward. So I'm looking forward to implementing that program as well. So I hope that gives you a sense of our work. We have a lot of challenges. I'm sure you know about and have heard about the huge increase in homelessness in Massachusetts among families. We're really working every day to try and reduce the numbers of families in the motels, but it's become very difficult over the summer. But we're deploying every resource we possibly can to make a dent into that problem. And then we have the federal government cutbacks that we're faced with. So I think there are a lot of great things going on. We need your help in advice and ideas, and keep those coming. And I know you're not shy, but we appreciate all the assistance you have helped us with. We have the best housing delivery system in the country. And we're utilizing all of our agencies. I know a lot of you feel very stretched to the limit, but we have to keep going forward. So thank you again for inviting me.